It was 3:07 a.m. when the silence broke. The kind of silence that fills small towns at night, thick, almost alive. Outside, the faint hum of a distant truck faded into the woods, and the cold air wrapped around the homes of Meadowbrook like a heavy blanket. But in one house, a 2-story blue-painted home on Ashford Lane, that silence shattered. A phone line clicked, and then came the whisper. "Please, my mom. She's bleeding." The operator froze. The girl's voice trembled, like she was hiding, whispering between sobs. "Someone's in the house," she said. Then, static, and the line went dead. At 3:08, the Hillsborough County dispatcher rerouted the call to 2 nearby patrol units. Officers Daniels and Ruiz were already 3 blocks away, responding to a minor noise complaint that suddenly didn't matter anymore. They arrived at 132 Ashford Lane within 6 minutes. No lights on the street, no neighbors awake. Only the faint flicker of a lamp behind the curtains. Ruiz knocked on the door. No response. Daniels called out, "Sheriff's Department." Silence. Then, a soft thud from inside. The two exchanged a glance, hands instinctively moving toward their holsters. Daniels tried the handle, locked. They circled around the side of the house. The kitchen window was open, just a crack. Enough for a sound to slip through. Something low, muffled, almost like humming. With a nod from Ruiz, Daniels used his flashlight to shatter the glass. The alarm didn't go off. Strange. Inside, the air was cold, stale, like the heat had been turned off hours ago. They entered cautiously. "Police! Anyone here?" The living room was neat, too neat. A cup of tea sat untouched on the coffee table. The TV remote rested exactly in the center of the couch cushion. But the rug near the hallway was soaked, not water, blood. Ruiz followed the trail, slow, step by step, until the beam of his flashlight hit something that made him stop breathing. A woman's hand, pale, still. "Daniels," he whispered. There she was, mid-40s, dark hair matted with blood, lying face down on the floor. No sign of struggle around her, no overturned furniture. Just the writing on the wall. In deep, smeared letters, drawn with what looked like her own blood. She deserved it. Backup was called immediately. When the second unit arrived, paramedics confirmed what the officers already feared. The woman was gone. Time of death estimated around midnight. But the house told a stranger story. Every light switch in the lower floor was taped off. Windows sealed. And yet, the upstairs bedroom lamp was glowing faintly, the only warm light in that cold, silent house. Officer Ruiz noticed something else. No landline phone, no cordless, no cell phone anywhere. And yet, the 911 call had come from this address. Could it be a neighbor? Daniels asked. Ruiz shook his head. Caller ID traced right here. Then, from the corner of the room, a faint sound, a drip, water from the upstairs bathroom. They moved up slowly, step by step, each creak echoing like thunder. At the top of the stairs, a child's room door stood open. Inside, the lamp was still on, and on the desk, an open diary. The last page read, "If he comes back tonight, I won't survive." The team secured the house. Crime scene techs photographed everything. The wall, the diary, the body. Outside, dawn was beginning to bleed into the sky. News hadn't spread yet, but something about the house felt wrong, like it was holding its breath. Ruiz found a picture frame in the kitchen. A smiling woman, the victim, and a teenage girl, maybe 14. Rebecca and her daughter, Emily Hunt. But Emily wasn't there. Her room was empty, bed untouched, window slightly ajar, footprints leading out onto the wet grass below. The air in that moment shifted. From murder to something worse. A missing girl. At 6:45 a.m., less than 4 hours after the call, a second report came in. A resident on Birchwood Trail had spotted smoke near the woods. When fire units arrived, they found a car, or what was left of one, burned almost completely. The plates matched Rebecca Hunt's vehicle. But what made the scene horrifying wasn't the fire. It was what remained inside. The driver's seat was charred, the steering wheel melted. Yet etched into the dashboard, carved with something sharp, were 3 letters. R.E.B. By sunrise, the small town of Meadowbrook was awake, but not alive. Yellow tape wrapped around the Hunt residence. Reporters gathered outside the cul-de-sac, and inside, detectives pieced together fragments of a story that didn't fit. No forced entry, no fingerprints other than Rebecca's and her daughter's, no sign of robbery, just blood, silence, and that one unfinished call. Detective Laura McKinney took over the case that morning. A seasoned investigator, she'd seen plenty of domestic tragedies. But something about this one, the message on the wall, the missing phone, the diary, felt like a setup. Whoever did this, she said quietly, wanted us to think it was personal. Ruiz nodded. Maybe it was. McKinney looked at the diary again, her fingers brushing over the last written words. If he comes back tonight, she whispered to herself, then who was he? Outside, cameras flashed. Neighbors spoke in hushed tones. No one had heard anything unusual. No screaming, no fighting, not even footsteps. Just silence. But for Detective McKinney, the case had already begun to speak. Through every detail, every mark, every unanswered question. Somewhere out there, a girl was missing. Somewhere, a killer was watching. And somewhere, in the quiet heart of Meadowbrook, the truth was waiting to be found. The morning sunlight spilled gently through the lace curtains of the Hunt residence. Rebecca stood by the window, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug of coffee. Outside, the trees swayed lightly, and the chirping of birds filled the stillness of Maplewood Drive. It was a quiet town, the kind that made you believe nothing bad could ever happen here. Her husband Daniel was already gone for work, leaving behind the faint smell of his cologne and a note on the kitchen counter. Have a beautiful day, Beck. I'll be home early tonight. She smiled faintly at the note. It was a small ritual between them, something that had kept their 12-year marriage soft, even when the world felt heavy. Emily, their 6-year-old daughter, came rushing down the stairs, her laughter echoing through the house. Rebecca knelt, helping her fix the small ribbon tangled in her hair. Mommy, do you think Dad will bring the balloons today? Rebecca chuckled softly. If you behave in school, maybe he'll bring 2. The morning continued like a picture-perfect scene from a family film. Breakfast, the school run, a short drive through quiet roads. Everything about the Hunt family felt ordinary, safe, predictable. But behind that calm, something subtle had started shifting. The kind of change you only recognize when it's too late. That night, after putting Emily to bed, Rebecca sat alone on the couch, scrolling through old photos. Smiles, beach trips, birthday candles, frozen fragments of happiness. But her eyes lingered on one photo a bit longer, Daniel standing beside her at the summer fair, his hand around her shoulder, his smile wide. Yet now, that same smile felt forced. Over the next few weeks, she began noticing small oddities. Daniel's late-night calls that ended the moment she walked in. The way he avoided eye contact during dinner. Once, she caught him sitting alone in the dark living room, whispering into his phone. When she asked who it was, he just said, "Work." But Rebecca could tell it wasn't work. At night, the silence in their bedroom grew heavier. The warmth between them felt colder, replaced by a strange distance she couldn't explain. She told herself it was stress, that Daniel's job as a financial consultant was getting to him. But deep down, a whisper inside her said something was breaking. Then, there were the dreams. Every night, Rebecca woke up at exactly 3:11 a.m., drenched in sweat. The same dream. A woman standing at the end of the hallway, whispering her name. When she turned the lights on, no one was there. At first, she thought it was exhaustion. But one morning, when she walked downstairs, she found Emily's toys scattered in a perfect circle in the living room, as if someone had been playing in the dark. She brushed it off. Kids sleepwalk sometimes, she thought. Yet when she looked at Emily that morning, her daughter's eyes looked distant. "Mommy," Emily whispered. "The lady says Daddy's angry." Rebecca froze. "What lady, sweetheart?" "The one who stands by the window at night." Her pulse quickened. She laughed nervously, kissed her forehead, and told her not to be silly. But the words wouldn't leave her mind. That same night, Rebecca stood in the dark hallway, watching the window Emily had mentioned. Nothing. Just the soft hum of crickets outside. But as she turned away, she swore she heard faint whispering, like someone breathing her name through the walls. Days turned into weeks. The tension in the Hunt household grew unbearable. Daniel came home later each night, his excuses rehearsed, his eyes tired. Rebecca wanted to confront him, but something inside her hesitated. A strange primal fear that maybe the truth was worse than she imagined. One evening, she found a small silver key in Daniel's jacket pocket, one she'd never seen before. When she asked him about it, he smiled faintly. "Just for the office," he said. But that night she followed him. Quietly. Her car lights off, keeping a distance as he drove across town to the edge of an abandoned industrial area. Daniel parked, entered an old storage facility, and stayed inside for nearly 2 hours. When he finally came home, Rebecca pretended to be asleep, but her heart raced with 1,000 questions. What was inside that building? Why had he lied? The next day, she went there alone. The air smelled of rust and damp cement. Inside, dust floated like ghosts in the light filtering through broken windows. And then she saw it. A chair, a table, and photos scattered across the floor. Pictures of their house, of her, of Emily, taken from outside their windows. She froze. Her breath caught in her throat. Who had taken them, and why were they here? A sound behind her made her spin, a door creaking, footsteps approaching slowly. "Rebecca." It was Daniel, his face pale, eyes wide. "What are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing," she whispered. For a moment, silence. Then he sighed heavily, ran his hands through his hair. "I didn't want you to find out this way." "Find out what?" she demanded. But before he could answer, a phone began to ring. He pulled it out, an unregistered number. When he declined the call, the same number flashed again. This time he answered. A voice came through, deep, distorted, mechanical. "You shouldn't have brought her there, Daniel." Rebecca felt her skin crawl. Daniel turned pale, his lips trembling. "Who is this?" he shouted. The voice laughed softly. "You already know." And then, silence. That night they drove home without a word. Rebecca didn't sleep. She stayed awake, watching Daniel's every move, every breath. Something was terribly wrong. And as the clock struck 3:11 again, she heard it, that same whisper. Only this time, it came from Daniel's side of the bed. The night after the warehouse incident, the Hunt residence no longer felt like home. The air was thick, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Rebecca sat in the living room, her eyes fixed on the shadows stretching across the ceiling. The clock ticked toward 3 a.m. again. Daniel was asleep upstairs. At least that's what she thought. Then came the sound, faint, almost imperceptible. A whisper from behind the wall. She froze. At first, she thought it was the wind, but the voice grew clearer, fragmented, childlike, echoing through the house as if crawling under the plaster. Rebecca. Her name. Soft, drawn out, and heavy with a tone that didn't belong to anyone she knew. Her pulse spiked. She turned on the lamp. The sound stopped instantly, as if silenced by the light. The next morning, Daniel avoided her eyes again. He acted like nothing was wrong. Breakfast, coffee, routine words. But Rebecca couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them. Even Emily seemed distant, quiet at the table, her spoon tracing circles in her cereal bowl. When Rebecca asked if she was okay, Emily simply whispered, "The lady doesn't like Daddy anymore." That night, Rebecca installed a small voice recorder in the hallway. She needed proof, something to make sense of the whispers she'd been hearing. At 3:11 a.m., it began again, a faint tapping from inside the walls. Then the whispering, fragmented words, but unmistakably real. She lay frozen, staring at the red glow of the recording light. By morning, she played the audio. Static, creaking. Then, a voice. Behind the mirror. Rebecca's heart dropped. Slowly, she looked toward the hallway mirror, an old, tall piece of glass Daniel had brought home from an antique shop years ago. That evening, when Daniel left for work, she approached it. The edges were cracked, the reflection slightly warped. She touched the glass, cold, almost wet. Then something moved, a faint blur behind the reflection. She gasped, stumbling back. The glass shimmered, as if something had brushed it from the inside. The following day, Rebecca called Daniel's office, but they told her he hadn't been at work for 3 days. She hung up, her hands trembling. He'd been lying again. When he came home that night, she confronted him. "Where have you been, Daniel?" He looked at her blankly. "Work." "Don't lie to me. I called them. You weren't there." Silence. Then his expression shifted, calm turning to irritation. "Why are you spying on me, Rebecca?" "I'm trying to understand what's happening to us." "Nothing's happening," he snapped. "You're the one hearing voices, seeing things that aren't there." She felt the air go still. His tone was cold, alien. Then he turned and left the room. That night, Rebecca hid Emily in her room and locked the door. The voice returned, louder this time. "Behind, the mirror." The same phrase, again and again. She couldn't resist anymore. With trembling hands, she lifted the mirror off the wall. Dust fell in a thin veil. Behind it, there was a hollow patch, a small hidden space sealed with wooden boards. She pried one loose. The stench hit her instantly, rotting air, damp and sour. Inside, wrapped in a decaying blanket, was a small box. She opened it. Photos, dozens of them. Each one of her, Daniel and Emily, sleeping, eating, walking, taken from angles only possible inside their home. But one photo made her freeze completely. It was of her, standing at the exact same mirror, but taken from behind the wall. The moment she saw it, the house lights flickered. Somewhere upstairs, a door slammed. Emily screamed. Rebecca ran up the stairs, shouting her daughter's name. The hallway lights burst one by one as she ran. When she reached Emily's room, the window was wide open, curtains blowing violently. Emily stood by the window, whispering, "She says you have to leave, Mommy." Rebecca grabbed her, pulling her away from the window. "Who says that?" "The lady in the wall," Emily murmured. "She's angry because Daddy broke the promise. Downstairs, the front door creaked open. Daniel was home, or at least something wearing his face was. His footsteps echoed, slow and deliberate. "Rebecca," he called softly. "We need to talk." She held Emily tight, her heart hammering. "What did you promise her, Daniel?" she whispered under her breath. Then came his reply from downstairs, calm, chilling, almost amused. "You'll find out soon." The voice recorder on the table switched on by itself. Static filled the air, and through the static, a voice, the same distorted one from the warehouse, whispered, "Welcome home, Rebecca." The night Rebecca found the photos, something inside her shifted. Fear was no longer just an emotion. It had become a presence. A quiet, invisible guest in the house that followed her every move. She didn't sleep. She sat on the edge of Emily's bed, holding her daughter close as the faint glow of streetlights painted the walls. Daniel didn't come upstairs that night, but Rebecca could hear him pacing below, the slow, rhythmic creak of footsteps, and sometimes whispering. Not to her, to someone else. At 3:12 a.m., the whispers stopped. Then, a single knock on the bedroom door. Soft, careful, almost polite. Rebecca didn't answer. The knocking came again. "Beck." Daniel's voice, calm, too calm. "Please open the door." She didn't move. The handle turned slightly. "Beck, it's me. I just want to talk." Her breath hitched. She whispered back, "Not tonight." Silence. Then, slowly, the footsteps retreated. The next morning, Daniel acted as though nothing had happened. He made breakfast, asked if Emily had slept well, smiled. But when Rebecca looked into his eyes, she saw something missing. A hollow stillness, like a man walking with someone else's soul inside him. Later that day, she found something strange on the kitchen table. A small wooden cross, wrapped in a piece of cloth, and a note underneath that read, "For her protection, do not remove." She didn't recognize the handwriting. That afternoon, she decided to leave the house. She packed a small bag for Emily, grabbed her car keys, but when she opened the front door, the street outside was empty. Silent. Every car, every neighbor, gone. As if the world outside had simply vanished. She stepped forward, and for a moment, everything flickered. The trees, the road, even the sky, like a broken film reel. Then, just as suddenly, it returned to normal. Rebecca stumbled back inside, locking the door. Her heart was pounding. She felt trapped, not just in the house, but in something else. By evening, Daniel still hadn't returned. She decided to go back to the warehouse. The sun was setting when she arrived. The metal door groaned as she pushed it open. The air smelled of mold and gasoline. In the far corner, under a dusty tarp, she found something she hadn't noticed before. A small chest, locked with a brass latch. She pried it open. Inside, old photographs, police documents, and a newspaper clipping. Family of 3 found dead in fire, March 18th, 1998. Rebecca froze. The photo attached to the article made her blood run cold. It was the same house she lived in now. And the woman in the picture, standing in front of the burning home, looked exactly like her. Same face, same eyes, same birthmark near the neck. The headline mentioned the name, Catherine Lynn. Rebecca whispered the name aloud, and that's when a voice answered, a whisper from behind her. She took everything that was mine. Rebecca turned. No one was there. She backed away, her eyes scanning the darkness, and then she saw her reflection in a cracked mirror leaning against the wall. Except it wasn't moving with her. The reflection smiled and whispered, "You made the promise, Rebecca." Her breath caught. "What promise?" she whispered back. But the reflection's smile widened, and suddenly, her ears filled with a deafening sound, like 1,000 overlapping voices screaming in reverse. When she opened her eyes again, she was lying on the floor of the warehouse. The night had fallen. Her phone buzzed beside her. It was a message from an unknown number. Don't trust Daniel. He broke the circle. Now she's awake. The next morning, Rebecca went to the town archives. She needed to know who Catherine Lynn was. The old librarian hesitated when she asked. "You shouldn't dig into that name," the woman whispered. "That story cursed this place." But Rebecca insisted. According to the records, Catherine Lynn was a woman who lived in that same house with her husband and daughter 27 years ago. Her husband was accused of starting the fire that killed them both. But when police arrived, they found his body outside, drenched in blood, screaming religious phrases, claiming the children were devils. Rebecca's heart stopped. It was the same report she had heard in Daniel's police call, the one from March 18th, 2018. History was repeating itself. She left the archive in a daze. The world around her felt unreal, like layers of time overlapping, bleeding into one another. When she reached home, the front door was open. Inside, Daniel was sitting on the floor, staring blankly at the wall. In front of him, the wooden cross she had found earlier, now broken in two. "Daniel," she whispered, "what did you do?" He looked up slowly, his eyes sunken, voice hollow. "She wanted a promise," he murmured, "and I gave it to her." "What promise?" "To keep the fire burning." Rebecca stepped back. "What fire?" Daniel smiled faintly. "The one that never went out." And then, all the lights went out at once. The house plunged into darkness. Emily's scream tore through the silence upstairs. Rebecca ran, her heart pounding. When she reached her daughter's room, the walls were trembling, as if something was moving inside them. Emily was standing in the corner, facing the wall, whispering softly. Rebecca pulled her away, shouting her name. But when Emily turned around, her eyes were not her own. A deep, hollow voice spoke through her lips, the same one from the warehouse recording. "She's coming, Rebecca. The promise must be kept." And then Emily collapsed. Rebecca screamed for Daniel, but when she looked down the hallway, he was gone. The front door stood open again, wind howling through it. Downstairs, the voice recorder flickered back on. This time, the playback didn't start from the beginning. It picked up exactly where it had stopped the night before. Through the static, a woman's voice whispered, calm, deliberate, almost tender. "I never died, Rebecca. You just took my place." The house felt different now. The walls breathed. The air pulsed like a heartbeat. And every shadow carried a memory that wasn't hers. Rebecca sat beside Emily's bed, her daughter still unconscious from the night before. The doctor said it was exhaustion, stress. But Rebecca knew better. It wasn't sleep. It was possession. She looked around the room. The wallpaper near the ceiling had begun to peel, exposing faint burn marks underneath. Black veins spreading outward, as though the house itself was rotting from inside. Downstairs, Daniel sat at the kitchen table, staring at the broken wooden cross. The morning light filtered through the curtains, landing on his pale face. His eyes looked hollow, glassy, as if something inside him had died long ago. Rebecca approached him quietly. "Daniel," she whispered, "tell me the truth. What did you promise her?" For a moment, silence. Then he spoke, voice low, trembling. "Before we bought this house, I came here alone. I wanted to make sure it was safe." He paused. His hands trembled. "She spoke to me, Beck, from the walls. She said she could give us what we wanted, a family, a home, peace, but only if I promised to never let the fire die." Rebecca stared at him, her mind spinning. "You're saying you made a deal with her?" He nodded slowly. "She asked for a sign, a flame that would never go out. I didn't understand it then." Rebecca's voice cracked. "What did you do, Daniel?" He looked up at her, tears in his eyes. "I lit the fire in the basement." That night, Rebecca went down to the basement for the first time since they moved in. It was cold and damp, the air thick with soot and ash. At the far end of the room, hidden behind a false wall, she found it, a small iron furnace, still burning faintly. The fire inside was weak, but alive, flickering blue instead of orange. Something about it didn't feel natural. It hissed and pulsed, like it was breathing. Next to the furnace was a circle drawn in black ash, symbols etched around its edge. And inside the circle, small bones. Rebecca stumbled back, covering her mouth. The bones weren't animal. A faint sound rose from the furnace, a voice whispering through the flames. Promises must be kept. Rebecca turned to run, but the basement door slammed shut behind her. The flames surged higher, painting the walls in flickering light. Then a shape began to form in the fire, a silhouette of a woman, her face half burned, eyes glowing white. "Catherine," Rebecca whispered. The figure tilted its head. "You took what was mine," it said. "My home, my child, my name." Rebecca shook her head, backing away. "I didn't take anything. You're dead." The voice grew louder, echoing off the walls. "Dead? No. I am what remains. I am what you promised to keep alive." The furnace roared, flames twisting like living arms. Rebecca screamed, pounding the door. "Daniel, help me!" Upstairs, Daniel woke to the sound of her voice. He ran down the stairs, but when he opened the basement door, a wave of heat hit him like a wall. Through the smoke, he saw Rebecca standing before the fire, her face lit in orange and blue. "Don't come closer," she shouted. "She's in the fire." But Daniel didn't stop. He stepped inside the circle, and the moment he did, the fire exploded upward, swallowing the room in blinding light. When Rebecca opened her eyes again, everything was quiet. The basement was cold. The fire was gone. Daniel was lying motionless on the floor, his skin pale, his body covered in ash. She crawled to him, shaking him desperately. "Daniel, please, don't leave me!" His eyes opened slowly, but they weren't his. They were glowing white. A voice, not his, spoke through him. "The promise is complete." Rebecca stumbled backward, horrified. "Please," she whispered, "just let us go." The figure smiled faintly through Daniel's face. "There is no leaving, Rebecca. You lit the fire when you moved in. You carried it here. You made the house, remember?" And then Daniel's body collapsed, lifeless. For a moment, the silence was unbearable. Then came the faint sound of a child's laughter, distant, echoing from the hallway above. Rebecca ran upstairs. Emily was gone. The bedroom window was wide open, curtains blowing wildly. On the wall above the bed, written in ash, were the words, "The fire never went out." Hours later, the house was in flames. Neighbors called 911 reporting screams, but by the time firefighters arrived, the structure was already collapsing. Only one body was recovered, a man's, burned beyond recognition. No trace of Rebecca or Emily was ever found. But when investigators reviewed the footage from a neighbor's security camera, they saw something impossible. At exactly 3:11 a.m., as the flames engulfed the house, a woman walked calmly out of the front door, carrying a child in her arms. The woman's face was blurred by smoke, but her silhouette was unmistakable. And in her arms, The child wasn't moving. The fire burned for 7 hours. When it was finally extinguished, the only thing left standing was the basement furnace, still burning with a faint blue flame. That night, across town, an empty hospital room's light flickered. A nurse passing by stopped and froze. Inside the room sat a woman by the window, her face hidden behind long black hair. In her arms, a small, lifeless doll wrapped in a child's blanket. The nurse whispered, "Ma'am, are you lost?" The woman turned slowly, her face half burned, her eyes glowing faintly white. She smiled. The fire never went out. 5 years had passed since the fire. The house at 42 Ashford Lane was gone, or so the town believed. But on the edge of the burned lot, something still stood. The stone foundation, half buried in ash, and that old basement furnace that refused to die. Every night, a faint blue glow pulsed from under the ground, too weak to call a fire, too alive to call it cold. The year was. A new family arrived in town. Dr. Martin Cole, his wife Sarah, and their 12-year-old son Ethan. They were city people, calm, practical, eager to escape the noise of modern life. When the realtor showed them the rebuilt home on Ashford Lane, Sarah hesitated. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "But why so cheap?" The realtor smiled, nervous. "Old stories," he replied. "You know how towns like this get, but the fire was accidental, nothing more." They bought it that same day. Their first night was quiet, too quiet. The air inside the house felt thick, like the walls had been sealed for years. The lights flickered once, then steadied. Sarah unpacked boxes in the kitchen. Ethan explored the hallways, his footsteps echoing faintly. He stopped when he reached the basement door. A new wooden lock had been nailed across it, painted over in fresh white. On the handle, a faint burn mark, circular, like the edge of a candle flame. "Mom," Ethan called. "What's down here?" Sarah glanced over. "Probably storage. Don't go in yet, sweetheart. It's old." But that night, while everyone slept, Ethan woke to a noise, a soft, rhythmic thump. Thump, thump, from below the floorboards. He followed the sound to the basement door. The air was cold. The lock, open. He pulled it slightly, and a faint blue light spilled across the floor. It came from below, breathing like the heart of something that had never stopped burning. By morning, Sarah found him asleep near the door. "Ethan!" she cried, shaking him. "What were you doing here?" He blinked slowly, disoriented. "She was calling me," he whispered. "Who?" "The lady in the fire. She said her name was Rebecca." Sarah froze. "What did she say to you?" Ethan's eyes wandered, half dreaming. "She said, it's our turn to keep the promise." That evening, Martin was reviewing patient files in his study when the power flickered again. He sighed and went to the basement to check the circuit breaker. The air grew colder with every step. When he reached the bottom, he saw something strange. A small furnace tucked into the corner, old and rusted, with a faint blue light glowing inside. He frowned. "That's impossible," he whispered. "The rebuild was from the ground up." As he leaned closer, he saw something carved into the side of the metal. A name. Rebecca Hunt, 2014. He reached out, and the moment his fingers brushed the iron, the blue flame flared violently. A woman's voice whispered, "Welcome back." Martin stumbled backward, heart pounding. He turned to run, but at the top of the stairs, Sarah stood watching him, her eyes vacant, her voice hollow. She's part of the house now, Martin, she said softly. And soon, so will we. That night, Ethan dreamt of fire. In his sleep, he saw the walls melt away, the ceiling turn to smoke, and a woman walking toward him through the flames, face half burned, eyes white. She knelt beside him and whispered, "You'll keep it alive, won't you? The fire, the promise." He nodded, trembling, and when he woke, his hands were covered in ash. Three weeks later, the neighbors began to notice something strange. At exactly 3:11 a.m., the lights in the coal house turned on every night and stayed on until sunrise. No one answered the door. No one left for work. When police finally entered, they found the house empty. All 3 beds unmade. A breakfast table still set for 3, untouched. And in the basement, the furnace still burned. Next to it, 3 small handprints in ash. That night, the old furnace roared higher than ever before, and in the faint reflection of the flames, a woman's silhouette appeared beside a young boy and his mother, all standing together in silence. The woman smiled faintly, whispering, "Now the fire is safe again." Then the screen fades to black, and a single line appears. It was a quiet afternoon at the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Department when Officer Maria Kent stumbled upon an unlabeled evidence box. Dust had settled thick over its lid, a decade's worth. She brushed it off and frowned. Written faintly in marker, almost faded. Case 442A, Hunt, Rebecca, Peak Lake incident. Maria's pulse quickened. That case, it had been sealed years ago. Officially marked closed due to fire destruction. But inside, beneath melted files and blackened photographs, lay a small, half-burned cassette tape. On its side, someone had written a single word in trembling ink. "Listen." Maria took the tape to the forensics lab. The technician, a tired man named Glenn, shook his head. "This thing's ancient. Might disintegrate if we try." "Try anyway," she whispered. The recorder clicked on. At first, only static. Then, faint voices, a man shouting, a woman crying. And under it all, something else. A sound like breathing, deep, rhythmic, not human. Glenn frowned, adjusting the levels. Then, the voices grew clearer. "Please, you don't understand. It's in the house. She's not Rebecca anymore. Daniel, come back. Don't leave me here. Daddy, she's burning. Emily, don't look at her. Close your eyes. No one leaves the fire. No one forgets." Maria froze. "Did you hear that last voice?" she whispered. Glenn nodded slowly. That wasn't Rebecca, or anyone human. Before they could replay the tape, the lights in the lab flickered. The recorder ejected the cassette by itself. The tape had melted, even though the player was cold. On the screen above the waveform monitor, a single sentence appeared, not typed by anyone. "The house remembers you." Maria's breath caught in her throat. She backed away from the equipment, heart pounding. The monitor flickered again, and for half a second, the security camera feed switched to live video from a dark basement. A small furnace burned with a blue flame. And behind it, a woman's silhouette turned slowly toward the camera, half her face blackened by fire. Her lips moved silently, then the feed went dark. Two days later, Officer Maria Kent didn't show up for her shift. Her desk light remained on all night. When deputies entered her office the next morning, they found the tape recorder still running. But the voice coming through it wasn't static. It was her own voice, trembling. It's real. She's real. The fire's spreading again. That same night, miles away, the Cole house, the new family's home, caught fire. Neighbors reported seeing a woman standing calmly in the flames, holding the hand of a boy. When the fire crew arrived, the house was gone. No remains, no survivors. Only a single tape recorder melted into the floorboards, still whispering one line on repeat. The forgotten must be remembered. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 nights. The town of Merrifield felt washed of color. Gray houses, gray streets, gray hearts that still whispered her name. Rebecca Hunt. Inside what was left of the Hunt property, the reconstruction had been abandoned. Police tape fluttered like tired ghosts. But beneath the ash, the basement door still waited, sealed shut from the outside. Detective Aaron Miles had been obsessed with this case for years. He'd read every report, every transcript, every theory. Tonight, he stood at the edge of the ruins with one goal: to end it. He pressed his recorder. Case 442A, reopening investigation. Objective, locate origin point of the fire. When he stepped inside, his flashlight caught the edges of a charred wall. Something shimmered faintly. A mirror, half melted, but still intact. On its cracked surface, words had been scrawled in smoke. "You never close the door." Aaron froze. "Rebecca." The air turned thick. He heard a soft hum, like a woman singing under her breath. A lullaby out of tune. He found the basement door half open. The lock was burned away. The wood splintered. A faint blue light pulsed from below, the same hue that witnesses had described years earlier. Each step down felt heavier than the last. When he reached the bottom, he saw the old furnace, its metal frame blackened, its center glowing faintly. Beside it lay a small, rusted box. He knelt, opened it. Inside, a locket. Inside the locket, 2 faces, Rebecca and Emily, smiling. For a moment, he could almost hear laughter. Then a sudden voice, right behind him. "She never meant to burn them." Aaron spun around. A woman stood there, barefoot, her dress soaked in ash. Her skin flickered between flesh and flame. Her eyes, human for a second, then hollow. "I tried to stop it," she whispered, "but it wanted more. It always wants more." The furnace roared. Aaron's recorder fell from his hand, still running. Recorder. Detective Miles. Date, October 22nd. There's someone here. Static. She's asking me to open the last door. The sound of hinges. A hidden panel in the basement wall shifted open, revealing a narrow passage, black stone, dripping with moisture. At the end of it, another door, steel and ancient. Rebecca stepped toward it. "I locked it once," she said softly. When the voice came for Emily, "But every fire needs air." She placed her hand on the door. Aaron reached out, trembling. "Rebecca, wait!" The door creaked open. A wave of heat surged through the tunnel, slamming the lights out. When they flickered back, Rebecca was gone. Only the furnace glowed, blinding now, white hot. Inside it, for a split second, Aaron saw her silhouette holding a child. Then, silence. Hours later, emergency teams arrived. They found no trace of Detective Miles. Only his recorder, still smoking, its last words barely audible through static. The door is closed now. Let her rest. Weeks passed. The county sealed the property permanently. But some nights, at exactly 11:43 p.m., Locals swear they see light under the ground, blue and steady, like a heartbeat. And if you stand too close, they say you can hear a woman's voice, faint but clear. The fire is not a curse, it's a promise.